Hello, welcome to another video where we are going to take a look at battles with a team from the graph that we made with Go Stadium. If you want to take a closer look at this graph, I will put the link in the description below. The team we'll take a look at is from Scafo99, and those are also his battles. Scafo99 is currently the #1 European player. He got top 6 last World Championships. I myself got top 10, and as did Tonton Bateus, the EYC champion. Scafo just got a little bit ahead of us here. You may have seen him at the World Championships. He is a really good player, very meticulous gameplay, something that anyone can learn anything from. And look at how he cheers his win. It was just beautiful. So this is his team on the right. He also gave me the IVs of his Pokemon. They don't really have specific wins or matchups, but he just wants to show that he runs good IV Pokemon, right? There's no Break or Bulk Boy Medicham here. There's no rank 1 Deoxys, rank 1 Lickitung. It's just what he has. Now, Scafo runs Dynamic Punch on his Medicham. That's because Medicham is actually his closer. Deoxys is his safe switch. One of the core breaks to this team is Noctowl, but because of the introduction of Carbink, very few people run something like Noctowl lead with Sableye in the back. That used to be a thing last season. Not so much anymore right now because Carbink annihilates that. The reason why he runs Dynamic Punch on Medicham is because it makes the Regiseteel matchup way better, right? Without Psychic, that matchup becomes much worse. And we will actually take a look at that soon as well. The main thing that you do with this team is that you bait out the ghosts with Deoxys, and Medicham Lickitung is just such a strong core. I think Deoxys is also just really strong because it core breaks a lot of teams like teams with Medicham, Alolan Sensors, as we saw in the previous video. Now, let's take a look at game number 1. The first battle, we're going to take a look at a Carbink lead. And Carbink is quite doable for Scafo's team because nothing on this team really hard loses to it. Now, Lickitung has super effective Power Whip, but it's a very so-so matchup. Carbink is a very IV-dependent Pokemon against it as well. It looks like he's deciding to stay in here because Scafo knows, because the opponent has a lost one turn on switching, he will outpace 2 Body Slams here. So you probably win the 1 shields, or you get this Venusaur really low at this point. But like I was saying about Carbink, none of his Pokemon do really bad against it, and you have super effective Power Whip as Lickitung, which is really nice. I believe you need either a really good IV or a really bad one to win it as the Carbink here, due to bulk and break points and whatnot. I like this farm down from Scafo. Now with shields down, that Carbink does become worse, and here's why. It's because it gives it the opportunity to land a Moonblast, and you see here that Medicham usually takes the 2 shields here against Carbink. It's also Rock Throw, which is better for Scafo. It's resisted, it charges energy slower than Tackle, so that's nice. Medicham, I believe, takes the 2s quite consistently. The 1 shield is bait dependent on Carbink's side. You need to bait a Rock Slide, and it also might be because of Dynamic Punch being more energy efficient than Psychic. A lot of Medicham run Psychic and Ice Punch, but yeah, Scafo runs Dynamic Punch. It just hits harder than the Psychic does, and it really comes in use for her. You see here how bulky that freaking Carbink is. It all just does so little damage. Ice Punch coming in, and it takes out the Carbink. In the back is the Medicham. You know what's funny about this? This is actually a team that I suggested. in the graph. It's a team that basically baits out the fighter with the Medicham. Looks like the opponent decided to go for the Venusaur safe switch instead. But yeah, that's the team that I recommend as well. I don't know if they got it from me, but I think it's a good team. Scafo went for a Dynamic Punch earlier because if you think you only get to 1 charge attack, the Dynamic Punch does more damage than an Ice Punch does. It's not more efficient. I believe the difference is like 2% or something in efficiency. But Dynamic Punch, if you only get to 1 charge attack, Dynamic Punch is the way. If you get 2 Dynamic Punches over 2 Ice Punches, Dynamic Punch is the way. Next battle, let's take a look. We have Lickitung into Regiseteel. This is a horrible lead for the Lickitung. Yeah, you have 2 fighters in the back though, so that's fine. In comes the Deoxys, and Deoxys, one thing that Deoxys is not great at is its HP stat, and it means that the lock-ons do relatively a lot compared to against other Pokemon, right? It really thrives on its defense stat, not its HP. The opponent throws a Zap Cannon first, and that leaves this Deoxys into Hydro Cannon range. This is very difficult to overcome. Opponent also shields the first Psycho Boost. That may not have been necessary, but I guess it does more than it does more than the second one, I guess. So maybe a good shield after all. And the Hydro Cannons just hit hard anywhere, basically on Scafo's team. Luckily, he does get to another Psycho Boost that might be needed. Otherwise, you cannot farm down that Swampert with the Lickitung. Now, one thing I do want to point out here, perhaps we have the Medicham against Regiseteel endgame. You see here that this is Medicham with Psychic and Ice Punch, which means you lose the 0 shields against most Registeels, especially if the Regiseteel is 1 lock on ahead, then it just wins. Now, if you take a look at the Dynamic Punch Medicham from Scafo, the matchup becomes so incredibly clean, right? You win the zero shields cleanly, and let's not talk about the other ones. Alright, in it comes a Pelipper. Now, Scafo does have an energy advantage here. He's going to build to a potential Psychic, even though he doesn't have it. The opponent doesn't know that. The opponent doesn't know that, so that's fine. Let's see. Opponent doesn't shield. That's crazy, actually, because if a Psychic landed there, the Medicham from Scafo may have been able to farm down. On the other hand, though, Pelipper still will get to a lot of charge attacks, and this Medicham is about to get in Zap kind of range here. Do you shield this as Scafo? He does not, knowing it's a Weather Ball. The game, his game is in Italian, but I can tell by the animation there. Ice Punch comes in, it's no shielded. Sorry, it is shielded, and I believe at this point, and this is very fortunate for Scafo, because this Pelipper would have probably been able to take out his Medicham. Now this leaves him to build to a Dynamic Punch, and then throw the Body Slam, and now you still have the Dynamic Punch for that Regiseteel. This is actually huge. The Regiseteel has to throw a charge attack. If it's going to farm down, it's actually going to take a Body Slam here. And let's see, does he get to a Body Slam? He does get to a Body Slam. This might be crucial, because this leaves the Regiseteel in Dynamic Punch range, right? The Reg probably should have thrown immediately there, but maybe he thinks that this Medicham is Psychic. It does not. In comes a Dynamic Punch. This is top tier play from Scafo, knowing that he needs energy to take out the Regiseteel. He had energy on the Lickitung. Very smart play there. Basically hard counts on every single swap, right? So in around these ranks, I believe this was around rank 13 or so, you face opponents that run serious teams that are god players. And you run people that want to run fun stuff. This is one of the more fun teams. I think Galvantula has no Pokemon to mess with, that's for sure. It has really good coverage. But this Heracross instead is not really that good currently. In fact, Double Bug is very bold. In a meta where Carbink is probably looking very good. And he decides to answer this with the Medicham. I do like this. The thing is, Deoxys has a Psychic Charge stack here. However, it takes massive damage from a potential Mega Horn. So does Medicham, but this doesn't KO. This is a Zufa, which is actually a close combat. And that means that this Heracross is probably running Rock Blast with it. The other charge attack that you can have is Earthquake. So yeah, this Medicham actually walls the Heracross. That's why I also think of Medicham as kind of a party pooper, because it's just beats all the other fighters. And now you see a masterclass in timing and energy management from Scafo here. Going for the first Ice Punch. He still has so much energy, knows he can get to another one. Throws a Dynamic Punch, thinking he might only be able to get to one charge attack before this Galvantula might throw his energy. But now look at this. Scafo sees that that last Volt Switch doesn't KO, so he's able to get to another Dynamic Punch just barely into the Volt Switch, and now the Volt Switch will KO. And look at that. One turn lick might KO this, but that sometimes applies, sometimes it doesn't. It's a little bit of an annoying, inconsistent mechanic, but it doesn't matter. The opponent has a Quagsire in the back. I'm not sure if that's 100% over. It probably is, even though Quagsire is actually quite good here. But yeah, about that, 1 HP Galvantula, or, you know, if the one turn attack KOs, right, with one attack when you swap in, sometimes the opponent cannot get a charge attack off just because it has priority. Unfortunately, that's an inconsistent mechanic. In the next battle, we're going to take a look at a core breaker. Now, take a look at this one, Umbreon. This is one of the few matchups that's pretty bad for Lickitung. The other one is probably Mandibuzz, out of the dark types, the common dark types. And you see on the left that Lickitung basically just loses all even shields. Honestly, it's also not the worst because of the bulk of Lickitung, and on top of that, Body Slam being such a good attack, right? But generally, yeah, this is just not great for Lickitung at all. Problem is that he has a Deoxys in the back as well, so you can't really swap out just yet. Maybe at some later stage you can, but because if there is a ghost in the back, you kind of do need to bait it out. But Scafo might also not be predicting a ghost in the back, because again, that would be super weak to Carbink. Carbink is now one of the few Pokemon that actually can wall Umbreon pretty well. It's standard moves, right? If it has Psychic, Umbreon can still hit it, but generally it's not good for Umbreon. The opponent actually messes up a little bit here. They're not going to throw a charge attack, which allows Lickitung to get to another Body Slam here, and it doesn't actually matter. It still gets the Umbreon really low here. But yeah, that may not have been necessary. The Umbreon already has a charge attack there, and he only throws it now. At least Scafo gets less farm now, so the Umbreon has that going for him. Let's take a look. Going into the Deoxys here, probably values the energy on it. Deoxys more than on the Azumarill, on the Medicham, and in the back is an Azumarill. Now, this is where Medicham straight up sucks, just because you'd have no Psychic. However, because they come in with the Azumarill into Deoxys, you're very fine here. Counters are resisted, however, you have Thunderbolt here, so that's really nice. right, is actually going to get blocked. This almost makes me think as if there's an obstacle in the back. And maybe there is, I don't know. Would be wicked with an Umbreon lead with obstacle in the back, and probably not too efficient. It is only an Ice Beam, that would not have KO'd, but Scafo needs to get a Thunderbolt in, right? Because your Metacham's entirely walled without Psychic. It's just a straight up bad time. Ooh, and the opponent actually catches this Thunderbolt. I think Scafo tried to throw on the charge stack priority, but the opponent read that. And this is also not great for Scafo. Look at this matchup down below here. We have Metacham with Dynamic Punch against Metacham with Psychic. Now, if you have the bulk and breakpoint Metacham, basically the Medi-Killer as they call it, you do win the 2 shields. So then it doesn't matter too much. Right, because you see here, these are these are both rank 1 that I simulated. You see here that like the 2 shields just get straight up really close. Right, the opposing Metacham will win with a very few HP. Scafo lets that go. Still is not optimal because you kind of don't want to give the Azumarill energy. In fact, this only gives the Azumarill a better chance to win the battle. But you also might need that Dynamic Punch to make sure the Thunderbolt kills. Now, if this is an Ice Beam and they were at 100 energy, they would now be at... actually, they would be at 99. Now 44. They need 1 bubble more, and indeed, that is the case. Metacham in the back was just difficult. Azumarill in the back got a little bit tricky. He needed his fighters up front. That's also a thing you can expect. If your opponent is leading, weak to fighting, they probably have fighting counters in the back. The next matchup we take a look at has an interesting lead. It's Lickitung against Steelix. Now, take a look at this matchup here. The simulation is a little bit weird on this one, so that's why it looks off. But you see here that Lickitung just loses hard. It only wins the 0 shields and the 2-0. You probably lose the, or sorry, win with the 1-2-0s as well. But just because the Steelix can keep debuffing, it's a very bad matchup. And I probably don't have to tell you this is also a terrible matchup. But he needs to bait out the Ghost at some point anyway, right? Because Metacham is the closer for his Scafo here. Goes for the first Psychic Boost. Does a moderate chunk on that. Travelant wants to get another one in. And then Lickitung can clean this up real quick. Lickitung also cleared his debuff and has some energy, so that's nice. The Breaking Swipe is good on Steelix, but it also doesn't hit very hard. It's not the same type attack bonus. It goes for the Shadow Ball there. That's needed. That's needed to KO from the Deoxys from there. I guess C-Pump comes in. So nice chip damage on this Lickitung. Let's take a look what's in the back. What comes back in? Likely the Steelix because it can eat these Power Whips just very cleanly. And then probably going into that Metacham. Yeah. Now let's see. On even shields, Metacham is going to get debuffed. It has to put in a lot of work, to be honest. Breaking Swipe, and it's an opposing Metacham. That's very difficult for Scafo here to overcome, simply because he's debuffed and he also does have Psychic. This might sound weird, but this might come down to the Lickitung to perhaps win it, but it's very difficult. Going to shield this up. It is a Psychic, so that's a good shield by Scafo. I like the play from the opponent, just going straight forward, right? Scafo's only win con at this point might be calling an Ice Punch. Opponent also shields that. Going back into the Lickitung to, clear the debuff, and maybe put in work with Lickitung. It is a Psychic that is thrown here. Lickitung won't be able to do a lot here other than get some licks in. Let's see. Oh, but this actually might give him the chance to get some more farm. Can he... Oh, the Steelix just to a Breaking Swipe, though. Oh, that's so unfortunate. That might... I think that loses Scafo this battle. I think that loses him this battle. Because otherwise, I think 2 Ice Punch would have killed. Now they might not. Maybe they still would. Maybe they still would. You might want to go for a Dynamic Punch if you only get to 1 more charge stack. But I don't think that kills anyway. Yeah, looks like the opponent's already at that charge stack. This will likely KO the Metacham, and that's an unfortunate loss for Scafo there. If that Steelix did not get to a Breaking Swipe, he would have won this battle likely. The next battle has also a different lead, which is the Pelipper. This is generally favorable for Lickitung just because you outbulk this Pelipper a lot. I think in the 2 shields Pelipper can win, but like you need to land, I believe, 2 baits, and then you need to at least land a Hurricane. I know that, and it's just pretty difficult as the Pelipper. He's not exactly weak against Pelipper, Scafo, because the Deoxys also has a manageable matchup. It's actually a matchup you lose in the 2 shields. But in the 0s and the 1s, you have that Thunderbolt, right? That just hits so hard. It KOs that. Saw 1 shield from the Pelipper there. And trying to catch on Deoxys unsuccessfully. Still another Weather Ball is thrown here. I believe it's a Weather Ball. Yep, it is a Weather Ball. Let's see what comes in. And it's the Regiseteel. Sometimes I would think this probably comes with Metacham or another Steel type. But the thing is, the other Steel types usually are better. Because they're also ground. And then they just walled Deoxys charge attacks. You might want to shield it though, yeah. A Zap Cannon does about 45% to Deoxys, and then the lock-ons just kill because they are slightly adding up. You see it, right? You see that HP going down from Deoxys. It's only 1 damage, but Deoxys has such little HP. Even though, you know, he has that full IV on it, but looks like the opponent does shoot that. Throw in the charge attack priority, and looks like Scafo does decide to let it go. Gonna sweep with that Medicham. There's still some energy on that Pelipper, which is difficult, but it's probably gonna come down to what's in the back here. And a no-shield immediately, probably knowing this is only a weather ball. Honestly, as Pelipper, I don't like this matchup too much, especially not when shields are going a little bit down, or I'm a shield down, right? Sometimes flyers are pretty dominant against Medicham. Pelipper is a little bit too fragile to do that, because if one Psychic lands, it just becomes iffy. And what else is iffy is this Medicham here. Going for that Dynamic Punch, not more efficient, but wants to get more damage in case he only gets to 1 charge stack here. I believe this also is only an Ice Punch. Yep, only an Ice Punch. So he's actually able to get to another charge stack here. And he is going for the Dynamic Punch. Again, does more damage than an Ice Punch. If you only get to 2 charge stacks, you might as well go for the Dynamic Punch. And the Lickitung already has so much energy here. Going for the Power Whip. 1 Body Slam is by far more energy efficient. But if you only get to 1 charge stack, again, Power Whip is just a little bit better. And that seals the deal for Scafo here. Alright, next battle. We have Lickitung into a Hitmontop. This is one of the more spicy Pokemon, but luckily Scafo has 2 answers for this. But the opponent also has an answer for Deoxys. This is actually one of the goes that Deoxys doesn't struggle too much with, especially in Ultra League, but in Great League Shadow Ball is a little bit harder. But you have Thunderbolt for super effective damage, so that's why this is somewhat more manageable. A Shadow Ball will do a lot of damage though. In Ultra League you can get 2 Thunderbolts, but I don't think you... Yeah, there's no way you can here. So he goes for a Psycho Boost. Makes sense. Which I think will leave the Jellicent into at 50... barely over 50, and this is actually a this is probably one of the best matchups that Lickitung can get, besides a full Ghost moveset, Dusclops. But if needed, like, you can also throw super effective Power Whip in this matchup. Obviously, Scafo is going to farm this completely down. And this, on Jellicent's side, it also has significantly improved since Surf. You still lose this really hard, but at least you deal consistent water damage back. Before it used to be Bubble Beam or Ice Beam, and that was just less efficient. Look at this, how much work this this Pokemon actually put in. You have almost 2 bodies. You have 2 body slams though, almost 3. So you get 1 off here. Hitmontop is one of the more bulky fighters. It's really not that fragile. And I think Scafo wants to try to get a shield there or something, but or maybe just getting counted down range. Let's see what's in the back. Looks like the opponent's going to throw. This could be triple Axle. That's the cheapest charge attack. The others are close combat Stone Edge. It is a close combat that wouldn't do too much damage. In the back is an Emolga. This is interesting. Now, fun fact about Emolga is it loses the 2 shields to Medicham if you don't get a discharge bait. That is if you're running Acrobatics. I may have to revisit the matchup with Aerial Ace because it's cheaper now, right? And I believe 2 with some Thunder Shocks will KO the Medicham. But I have to recheck that, especially on NG disadvantage. I still think Medicham might take that. Look at how close it actually gets. But yeah, since Scafo did get baited there, this Emolga gets to an Acrobatics and it will take out a million Medichams. Fun fact, Emolga is also fragile. It actually gets licked down here, and Lickitung is able to barely get to that Body Slam. That's a really good ending there for Scafo. Really good ending. Was this all intended? I don't know. But Hitmontop Emolga is a thing. I respect it. Next battle has an Azumarill lead. And this is a very good lead for Lickitung. Azumarill is very slow in its spacing. And it looks like there's a Venusaur safe switch. This is... Venusaur is not a Pokemon I like to safe switch, to be honest. Like, obviously it can fight back against most things. But man, if you get locked on like a good fly against, like Noctowl, Mandibuzz, or... you know, those flyers, they just... Or Skarmory even, like those are just so tough for Venusaur. Either way, as long as Scafo keeps switch here, you can align his Deoxys to that Azumarill, so he will be fine here. I think that's the key thing that you want to do here as Scafo. Opponent seems to wait a little bit. And he's actually going to let that go. I'm very curious about this gameplay here. Going for the massive farm down with the Deoxys. Can you? Probably. You will need all that energy for the Azumarill though, but if the Azumarill's not coming in, never mind. Ignore what I said. The Azumarill comes in right away. And now it's okay for Scafo, because at this point, your Medicham is free from both that Venusaur and the Azumarill, right? You have your Deoxys right here. A Hydro Pump wouldn't even take out. Looks like Scafo knows this. He lets it go. It is only a player off that does moderate damage. One thing that really hurts Azumarill is Play Rough. Play Rough is not a very efficient attack. It's really not as good as Moonblast. And look at that counter down from the Deoxys. What's in the back here? Are we going to find out? Azumarill lead, Venusaur, Safe Switch, and in the back is a Talonflame. This is a Pokemon that used to be extinct, and look at this quick reaction from Scafo. Opponent tries to catch an attack there on the Venusaur unsuccessfully, and at this point, what do you do? The Flame Charge could be Brave Bird. It's actually the Brave Bird that knocks out this Medicham. But Scafo knows that if you do that, your Talonflame is triple debuffed, and this Thunderbolt would likely KO it. There's a shield though. Now you do one counter. Oh, but Scafo, oh, he makes a mistake. You can only do one counter there because on the ending of your second counter, the damage registers, and that's why he didn't get it off. Usually, 2 counters and then your charge stack is optimal against a Talonflame, but in this case, only 1 was needed. I don't know if that would have killed though. The next battle is against a Gligar, a regular Gligar, or shiny Gligar. Now, Lickitung actually does much better against regular Gligar than against Shadow. Shadow can actually beat Lickitung. Opponent tries to catch an attack on the Dugong, which honestly is not something you want to switch into a Lickitung. Especially when it's loaded. I think otherwise Dugong might be fine when shields are up, but like when Lickitung is loaded with a Power Whip, it's not ideal. It's really not ideal. But what I really like about Dugong is that it leaves your targets into, and whatever answers the Dugong into farm damage. And look at this very high level play from Scafo. He can actually lose switch here, but it will come at the cost at 2 shields. And like this, the Gligar gets way less farm. And looks like the Dugong is let go. Now you still have a double super effective Ice Punch, which I think is double debuff though, so will do much less damage. Yeah. Wow, actually very little damage for double super effective attack. Body Slam coming in though. Scafo is not accepting that this Gligar would get too much in there. And in the back is an Alolan Sandslash. Gligar double Ice. Okay, interesting. This is also not that great of a matchup for the Sandslash if you have Shadow Claw, because the Shadow Claws are double resistant on Lickitung. Lickitung just outbulks, and it's actually just, you know, Lickitung generally wins the 1s and the 2 shields. You only win the 0 shields if you manage to land 1 Power Whip as the Lickitung. That's on even energy and even and full health. This Alolan Sandslash building up a lot of energy here, but it all doesn't matter. I think Scafo knows that at this point, with 2 shields still on his side, he can probably just counter everything down, and the opponent realizes that. The final game we take a look at, we see another Steelix. This time it's Shadow. This is not a great matchup for Scafo, so he decides to go into Deoxys. And you see the matchup on the left here is that Deoxys wins this like very barely. The one annoying thing about this matchup mostly is that you can't really throw your first attack before the breaking swipe. Simply because you start debuffing yourself right away. The key to play this is the way Scafo is doing this right now. You keep countering until the very end, and then you can unleash your Psycho boosts. You see the 1s and the 2s just get so close here, and Scafo plays this like perfectly. Deoxys, I believe, also wins the charge stack priority against Steelix. It's actually like very bulky, the Steelix. So you can just throw them back to back here. Steelix wouldn't even win the CMP if he triggered it. So Deoxys barely winning this. 1 HP there. Let's see what comes in. It's a Hitmontop, of course. Yes, the Hitmontop. You have Medicham for this. It's already ABA to Medicham. It looks like the opponent is 3 times weak to Medicham, I guess. So that concludes the last battle of this video. So that concludes the battles of these 2 sets with the team of Scafo. I think a very simple generalist team. Medicham and Lickitung is basically still very difficult to break nowadays, and I think it's still really solid if you are looking for something simple to run. So thank you, Scafo, for submitting these battles. Hope you liked the video, and again, if you want to check this graph more in depth, I'm posting the link in the description. Thank you for watching, and see you. Bye.